It's interesting, of course, because you say that at a time when President Trump has put a stop to all work visas till the end of the year because the focus, he says, on giving people jobs, Americans who need those jobs. You've seen also earlier what President Trump had announced on trade tariffs with China. And of course, India and China are currently in a very different situation where economic issues or economic tariffs may well be on the table as well. So do you see that now perhaps inter-country tensions, you've seen other countries calling for an investigation into China's role in the pandemic. What impact is that going to have? It's interesting, of course, that China is the only country which your forecast shows as having positive growth.
I mean, there are risks. So in terms of when we list out the risks to our forecast, we mentioned trade tensions and geopolitical tensions as being one of the important ones for precisely the reason that you mentioned, which is we are seeing this happening around the world. That is a major concern. I mean, in the very near term, a major concern for us was countries putting restrictions on medical exports. And, we called for that reversal. A lot of that has happened, but still more needs to be done. When treatments are made available and vaccines actually are finally there, again, to make sure that it's globally available and it can be produced at scale and sold everywhere. I mean, that will require global cooperation. So, this is a crisis, it's a global crisis that's not going to be solved locally. And which is why globalization, global cooperation, global integration is very important. And, we highlight that. And our hope is that will, that countries will make sure that they remain integrated.
Do you think that applies to work visas as well, or the H-1B visas, just such a huge issue for Indians, as we know, major beneficiaries of those visas?
I mean, again, like I said, many countries are reassessing their policies in terms of, trade, goods trade, services trade, people moving around. And I mean, at least in the case of immigration, I think what we can say is that pretty much all of the evidence, and especially if you look at high-skilled immigration, almost all of the evidence points to the fact that it's beneficial for the country receiving these high-skilled immigrants. It's very, very beneficial.
So just looking perhaps more specifically at the forecast, you've said that India likely to contract by minus 4.5%, but you predict a robust growth perhaps in 2021, a 6% growth. China, as I said, is still reflected as positive growth. Just some of the analysis of what went into the India growth specifically, and then perhaps we can look at why China is a bright spot at the moment.
So in the case of India, and I'm going to just make sure that when you add up the numbers, if you look at our growth projection for 2020 and add up the growth projection for 21, I mean, over 2 years, we are basically saying growth in India over a 2-year period will be slightly over 1%. So, that is not a very strong growth picture. But again, this is similar to many other countries around the globe. In terms of where the recovery will come from, first, it just starts from the fact that we have will be incredibly deep downturn in India this year. And as you have reopening and as the health crisis abates and as the global economy recovers, India will also recover. And that's the path. But this is still well below the path that was projected before this crisis hit. In the case of China, China is one of the countries, actually, yes, it's among the larger economies. It's the one with positive growth. Hard to find another one. And their recovery is also one of the strongest. And I think this reflects the fact that they've just had a much quicker success in containing the virus, needing briefer containment periods. And you see the recovery is well underway, across the board now in China.